Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're diving deep today, really deep into the art and the mind of Bob Camblin.
Yeah, he's quite a figure.
He is, and we've got a lot to dig into. We got some of his writings.
Oh yeah, which can be quite something.
They really are. And
Well,
some biographical info to give us some context, plus people's interpretations of his art, like that analysis of Figure 4 diorama on the Incomplete Works of YouTube channel.
oh, that's a good one.
It is. And then we've got perspectives from all these book reviews and forewords, trying to get a full picture of this guy.
Right, because he's a bit of a mystery.
He is enigmatic, to say the least. So what we're going to do in this deep dive is really try to understand his artistic philosophy, how it evolved over time.
Yeah, how he got from point A to point B and what that even means with someone like Camblin.
Exactly. And then those recurring themes, those threads that run through all his work.
The things that make a Camblin.
Right. And hopefully, by the end of this, we'll all have a little bit better grasp of this, well, I'm going to say it again, enigmatic artist.
That's the right word for him.
It is. And maybe we'll even start thinking about art and even life a little bit differently.
Well, that'd be ideal.
So let's start at the beginning. Oklahoma, 1928.
All right, setting the stage.
Bob Camblin enters the world, and right away, art is in the air. Both his parents are artists,
They'll do it.
but it's not just them. It seems his hometown, Ponca City, had a big impact too.
Oh yeah, Ponca City in the 30s and 40s. That's an interesting place to be. You've got this crazy opulence, the Marland estate, all that oil money. But then right alongside it, you've got, well, normal life for the time. Basic appliances, limited ways to communicate, extremes.
Yeah, like grandeur and the mundane all smashed together.
That's it. And I think that really played a role in Camblin's later work, where he takes these everyday objects and puts them in these surreal landscapes. It makes you rethink what's important, what's significant.
Makes you look twice at that, I don't know, that old shoe in the corner.
Exactly.
And then, of course, you've got the Pioneer Woman statue in Ponca City.
Right, a landmark.
Huge landmark.
Yeah.
And apparently it had this personal significance for him because of his mother, Viva Camblin. The double V, right?
Yeah, the double V. He worked that into some of his pieces.
Like a secret code.
Uh-huh.
Did he ever say what the double V meant to him? I mean, do we have any clue?
He wasn't always super clear about that kind of thing, but when it does show up, it often seems to be when he's dealing with themes of heritage, memory, like where he came from, those roots. It's subtle, but it's there.
Like he's grounding himself.
Yeah, I think so. And then we can't forget The Wizard of Oz. I mean, 1938, he sees that movie and it just blows him away.
I bet.
That tells you something right there. Illusion, transformation, going off on these crazy adventures, all those themes, they pop up again and again in his later work, especially when he gets into metamorphosis and, those shifting realities he creates.
And speaking of those formative years, there's his friendship with Forrest Harrisberger, another artist. They meet in high school, and those guys stay close for, what, like 60 years?
Crazy, right?
Even though they're doing their own things artistically, they even joined the Air Force Reserve together, which led to those sketching trips along the California coast.
Yeah, you got to wonder, how much did those early experiences, like sketching together, feed directly into his style later on?
Right. I mean, we can't ignore those years they spent at the Kansas City Art Institute on the GI Bill either, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's hard to say for sure about direct influences, but you can't deny the importance of that kind of environment. Two young artists figuring things out together, bouncing ideas off each other. That has to shape you.
Yeah, like iron sharpens iron.
Exactly. Plus, Camblin was a huge reader even as a kid, skipping class to finish books. And the stuff he was reading, Emerson, the I Ching, that's all about change and interconnectedness.
And then there's haiku.
Right, haiku. Short, to the point, focused. It all points to this guy who's searching for meaning, for understanding. And that, I think, is what really fuels his art.
Then, boom, Fulbright scholarship. Off to Italy.
Oh, man, can you imagine?
I mean, to see those masters firsthand, especially at the Uffizi, Botticelli, right? The Birth of Venus, Primavera.
Huge influences on him.
Huge. Although he didn't just copy them, he kind of made them his own, you know? Like, he puts KPFT radio in Houston into his version of The Birth of Venus.
It's Camblin for you. So what do you think it was about Botticelli that really grabbed him? I mean, was it the lines, the way he uses lines, the allegorical stuff? Or something else?
I think it was all of that, but also the challenge, taking these Renaissance masterpieces and filtering them through his own 20th century lens. He's connecting them to his own time and experiences.
Right, and we can't forget the Capuchin catacombs in Palermo. That really messed with him.
Yeah, those images, he said they were so powerful that they might always be a part of his art. Mummy imagery, he called it.
And you see it, those abstract figures, those shapes. It's like this constant reminder of death, of time passing.
Like a memento mori woven into his art.
Exactly.
And it seems like Camblin, he wasn't one to stay in one lane for too long. He starts with social protest themes.
Right, out of the gate.
Then he's mixing social realism with what's called non-objective art. Now, for someone who doesn't know art lingo, what's that all about?
Good question. So, non-objective art, it's basically art that's not about depicting the real world. No figures, no landscapes. It's all about exploring abstract forms, colors, textures.
Just for the sake of it.
Yeah, kind of. The experience of looking at it is what matters, not what it represents. Now, Camblin, he'd sometimes sneak in little symbols or hints of meaning into his abstract stuff, but for the most part, it was about those pure visual relationships.
Gotcha. And this is where he starts treating his drawings as complete works, right?
Exactly. Not just sketches anymore. He's doing these huge, complex drawings. I mean, they're as big and involved as his paintings.
So why the switch to drawing?
Yeah.
What was it about that medium that he connected with?
I think he liked how direct it was, how immediate. It's just you and the paper, no layers of paint, no fancy techniques. And his whole thing with corrections in his drawings, that's interesting too.
Corrections.
Yeah, like he'd use white gouache or even stick pieces of paper over parts he wanted to change.
So instead of just starting over,
He incorporates those changes into the final piece.
like those mistakes become part of the art itself.
Right. It shows his process, the way he thinks. He's not trying to hide it. He's embracing it.
Okay, now in the 1960s, he makes this conscious decision to combine the style of Hugo van der Goes, the guy with the super detailed religious paintings, with Goya, who was all about those dark emotional scenes. That sounds super intentional, like he's really studying art history and trying to create something new from it.
He was definitely in conversation with those old masters, not copying them, but trying to take what they did and bring it into the 20th century. He wanted to make art that was just as poetic, just as emotionally powerful, but in a way that felt relevant to his time.
And then the 1980s roll around, and he teams up with Nancy Giordano. They create these Mouches Volantes pieces. What does that even mean?
Mouches Volantes literally translates to flying flies, which is a bit strange, but it makes sense when you see the art. It's all about using patterns and visual tricks to make things shimmer, to make it seem like things are floating.
So it's like an optical illusion.
Exactly. And to really experience it, you have to be an active viewer. You have to engage with it, which is a big shift for Camblin. He's not just presenting you with an image, he's inviting you to participate.
And through all these changes, it seems like he had this really strong belief about what art should be, what it should do.
Oh, yeah. He thought art should be more than just something pretty to look at or something critics talk about or something you buy and sell.
Like it had to have a deeper purpose.
Exactly. He talked about art being for life's sake or art for my sake or art for survival's sake. He wanted it to mean something, to connect with people on a deeper level.
And he used all these different techniques to do that. Symbols, unexpected combinations, surprises, even non sequiturs, like throwing something totally random into the mix.
Right. He was trying to get past your rational mind and speak directly to your imagination or subconscious.
He even called his artworks puzzles to be solved.
Yeah. Like there are these mysteries you have to unravel.
And his ambition to remake Goya in 20th century terms, I mean, that's a bold statement.
It is, but it shows you what he was aiming for. He saw a connection between Goya and himself, a shared need to confront these uncomfortable truths about being human. But he had to find his own language to do it, a visual language that spoke to his time.
And his relationship with words, it's interesting. He knew they could be powerful, but also tricky. Like they could reveal things, but also hide things.
Yeah, kind of like the visual elements in his art. Another thing is that he wasn't really into color just for its own sake.
Really?
Yeah, he often stuck to these muted colors, especially in his drawings. It's like he felt that too much color would distract from the ideas he was trying to communicate.
Huh. Like it was too superficial.
Yeah, maybe. Ultimately, he wanted his art to make you think, to question what you think you know about reality.
So let's talk about some of the big themes that run through his work. Metamorphosis is a huge one, right? You see it in those scarecrows, lobsters, puppets, larvae shells.
Lots of transformation going on there.
Birth, Death,
Fire.
rebirth, it's all there.
Yeah, and it shows how connected he was to the natural world. He's looking at these cycles of change and decay that happen all around us, and he's reflecting them in his art.
Okay, now what about that figure 4 trap? It shows up a lot.
That's a good one. It's a simple thing, a tool for catching animals, but in Camblin's hands, it becomes so much more.
Like what?
Well, on one level, it's about human ingenuity, our ability to survive, to manipulate the natural world. But it also speaks to this tension, this conflict between us and nature.
In that YouTube analysis, they point out that it can also be a symbol of being trapped by our own rigid ways of thinking.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Like, we can get so caught up in trying to control things and clinging to our ideas that we end up trapping ourselves. It connects to Zen Buddhism, the idea of letting go.
They even bring in the I Ching.
Oh, yeah, the I Ching. Love that. They relate it to hexagram 29, the abysmal, which is all about facing the unknown, and hexagram 47, oppression, being stuck, weighed down. It's pretty deep stuff.
And in that figure 4 diorama, the image of the dry riverbed, it's like even though the river's gone, the path is still there.
Right, it's like a scar on the landscape, a reminder that things change, things flow, even when it seems like everything's dried up.
And the contrast between rigid and flexible, like trees versus bamboo, that comes up a lot too.
Oh, absolutely. It's about resilience, about learning to bend without breaking.
Important life lessons there.
Big time.
And then there are the scarecrows.
He loves scarecrows. Said he got the idea from Gunter Grass.
I wonder what they represent to him. Renewal, maybe?
Hmm.
Or some kind of commentary on society.
It's open to interpretation, right, which is what Camblin loved.
Then you've got St. Bambola, this figure from his own personal mythology, and jars of water. He said they represented turning obstacles into opportunities.
Yeah, turning stumbling blocks into stepping stones.
It all ties into his fascination with how we see the world,
Yeah.
illusion versus reality. The fact that everything is always changing.
And that idea of everyday enlightenment.
Right. Finding meaning in the mundane, seeing the beauty in the broken. It's like he's saying, you don't have to go searching for some big grand truth. It's all right here, right in front of you.
If you know how to look for it.
Exactly. So let's switch gears a bit and talk about Camblin the man, the person behind the art. He taught for a long time at Rice University and other places.
Yeah, he was a professor, but he was also this really collaborative artist. He did all these crazy happenings with guys like Earl Staley and Joe Tate.
B&E Productions, the holding firm, those were their group names. So what exactly were these happenings? Like what went down at one of those?
Okay, so imagine this. It's the 1960s and art is getting wild. These happenings, they were like performance art pieces, but they were also kind of, I don't know, social experiments. They often involved the audience, and the goal was to break down the walls between art and life.
So it wasn't just about passively looking at something on a wall.
No way. It was about being part of the experience, about the unexpected. They could involve theater, visual art, music, whatever.
Sounds chaotic.
It probably was. But for Camblin, these collaborations were important. They challenged the idea of the lone artist, the genius working in isolation.
And he wasn't too fond of traditional galleries either. He even said artists should have total control over the gallery space.
Right, like it should be their studio and their exhibition space all in one. He didn't want any outside interference. He wanted people to see the art, but also the process, the messiness of creation.
And then, 1976, he makes this big decision. He drops everything and goes nomadic, devotes himself fully to his art.
Yeah, he hits the road, travels all over, gets inspired by different cultures.
But he also starts being really private. Sometimes he doesn't even sign his work or he signs it anonymous. Or Mr. Peanut.
Mr. Peanut, what's that about?
Right. What's up with that?
I think it ties into this idea that the artist's ego shouldn't be the focus. It's the art that matters, not the person who made it.
Like he's trying to disappear behind the work.
Yeah, and it fits with his whole thing about art speaking directly to the soul. No distractions, no hype, just a pure connection. And this desire for privacy, for anonymity, it might explain why he became more and more reclusive later in life, spending his final years kind of off the grid in Oregon and Louisiana.
So back to figure 4 diorama for a minute. We talked about the Zen and I Ching interpretations, but the artwork itself is just so visually striking. You've got that pale sky, the brown earthy land, the blue river.
It's sparse, but there's a lot going on in that sparseness.
Right. And the trap, tied up, frozen in time.
That's a key element. Like, it represents these ideas or possibilities that are stuck. They can't move forward. It's like a metaphor for what happens when we get too rigid in our thinking.
And the way it's presented pinned up like a scientific specimen, it creates this sense of artifice. Like this isn't reality, it's a constructed version of reality.
Exactly. And that faint blue river, even though it's dry, it still suggests this flow, this essential life force that's running through everything.
And those subtle lines that look like architectural drawings or maybe scientific sketches.
He loved blending those precise technical elements with a more expressive, painterly style.
It's like he's saying that even our most carefully constructed ideas are still just small representations of a much larger, more complex world.
Right, and that there's beauty in both the precise and the imprecise.
And some of those book reviews and forewords we looked at, they talk about Camblin's art as a series of questions disguised as images, and then philosophy is our attempt to answer those questions.
I like that a lot. It makes him sound like he's starting a conversation, not giving us all the answers.
He's making us work for it.
He is.
And this idea of taking ordinary things and turning them into symbols, into metaphors for something bigger,
That's pure Camblin.
the figure four trap, it becomes this way of thinking about freedom and constraint, both literally and figuratively.
And he doesn't just focus on physical traps, but also the traps we create for ourselves. The traps of fear, the traps of time, the traps of our own minds.
And the theme of stillness, that comes up a lot too, like this tension between being constantly busy and finding peace in just being. It makes you wonder if his retreat into solitude later in life was his way of exploring that, you know?
Maybe he was looking for that stillness within himself.
And those writings that talk about experiencing art as a form of reading, like you have to actively engage with it, you have to interpret it for yourself. It's all about that personal connection.
He wanted his art to speak to you directly, not through some critic or curator.
And that collaborative spirit he had early on, it shows that he wasn't afraid of other people's ideas. He was always questioning, always pushing boundaries.
And the fact that he often drew inspiration from his own life, it suggests that his art was a way of processing his experiences, of making sense of the world around him.
So to wrap things up, I think it's safe to say that Bob Camblin's art is an invitation to think differently, to look for beauty where you least expect it, and to dig a little deeper, to find those hidden meanings that are lurking just beneath the surface of everyday life. He was all about challenging our perceptions, making us rethink what's real, what's important.
He was all about that, and his exploration of change and perception and how everything is always in flux. It gives you a whole new way of seeing the world.
Exactly. And he didn't make it easy. He didn't want to spoon-feed you the answers.
No, he wanted you to work for it, to really think about it.
To solve those puzzles he created. So here's a final thought to chew on. Where in your own life are you holding on too tightly? Is it an idea, an expectation, a need to be in control? What would happen if you loosened your grip a little, like untying that figure four trap? Maybe you'd find some new possibilities, a more fluid, adaptable way of moving through the world. And what about those everyday puzzles in your life? The things that frustrate you, the things that seem impossible to figure out? What if you approach them a little more playfully, a little less logically? Maybe, just maybe, you'd find that the solution was right there all along, waiting for you to let go and see it.
I like that.
And that is our deep dive into the world of Bob Camblin.
A world well worth exploring.
Until next time.
See you then.